Wow, awesome. So it sounds like you guys are ready to start. I'm having some technical difficulties. My microphone isn't working, so I'm going to be projecting a lot. So if you can hear me there in the back, thumbs up. All right. Oh, is it working now? Oh. Sorry. Cool. Well, thank you guys for coming out today. Hopefully you're enjoying DevFestMN 2018. So awesome time. Wow, a lot of energy still for this late in the day. It's awesome. Well, I know we had a couple other PWA talks this morning, great talks, but thank you guys for still showing up and excited to learn about PWAs. So I'm going to do a quick poll real quick. I want to know who's heard of PWAs before this talk. So decent amount. That's good. That's good. Who here are native developers, like Android, iOS developers? We have any native developers? All right. Got a handful over there. All right. Hopefully I don't make any offensive comments. This is not intended for that. How many web devs? I assume the rest of you should raise your hand for that. Cool. All right, awesome. Well, this talk is not going to be going over any particular frameworks or platforms. I'm diving into the core, what makes a PWA. All right, so quick introduction. I am Kyle Paul. If you've found me online on some form or fashion, I work in a lot of these tools online, Firebase, Angular, Google Maps, APIs, stuff like that. So you either find me tweeting or GitHubbing some of this stuff. I am the founder and president of the GDG Kansas City group. So there's the GDG Twin Cities. Ours is a 501c3 nonprofit, hence the president title. So I am also an organizer there. I am a co-founder and CTO of a startup in Kansas City known as Visionary, where we're a service provider where a lot of these tools come into play. I am also a Firebase GDE, a Google Developer Expert. So we have a couple other Google Developer Experts here in the room. So there's a handful of us. So it's just an inflated title that Google gives you saying that you know a lot about a particular Google technology. And you can find me on Google Plus and Twitter there. But some of you might have seen my name somewhere before. If you look in the footer of the DevFestMN website, the DevFestMN website is actually a PWA. So if you have installed this on your phone, you have been using a PWA already. And Stephen and Lloyd put this together based off of a project that I started a few years ago. And so they still left a little attribution to me there on the footer of the DevFestMN website. The other awesome thing, no presentation is without, is cat photos. So these are my two little cats, Penelope and Juliet. This is one of the very few photos where they actually are getting along together. So they're adorable little fluff balls. So I have to include them. So we'll do a quick outline on what we're going to be discussing today. We're looking at how did we get here? So why are we talking about PWAs? What are PWAs even? So if you attended some of the earlier talks, you have a general idea, but we're going to do a deep dive into that. The principles that make up PWAs, the architecture of PWAs, and I'll finish out with some examples, resources, and tools that you can go home, go back to work, play with later. But as we all learned in grade school, you have to understand the history to know where you're going in the future. So we're going to take a brief history lesson to understand why we have PWAs. The one thing we all know, software distribution is hard. So getting users for your software is crazy difficult. Some of you recognize this building. There's not a lot of them left. Most of them are new enterprises now, but the idea was to get your users to use your software, they had to drive to a store, purchase the software, come back home, install it, and then be able to use it. So getting those customers, those users, to even go to the store was incredibly difficult. How they figured out where to go get your software from, how to install it. There was these barriers that you had to go through. And this includes getting updates to software that you already owned. So like the next version upgrade or the service pack, if you talk about Windows days. So you had to go drive to the store, purchase the update, come back home and wait and install it. Sometimes it looked like this. I actually have this set. This is Office 95, and it was a lot of floppy disks. Another barrier you have here, if you install these out of order, you're going to have a bad day. So that's another part of your software distribution. You have to train your users how to even install your software. So now everybody has to have that experience level, which makes for a bad product and bad experience in some cases. Disk get damaged, install it in the wrong order, you get it too close to a magnet, things happen. And so then websites came along where you can then, and so that way your users no longer had to drive to the store, they can just purchase it online, and then you would ship it to them. They would still have to go through the pain of installing it, and then any update, they'd have to purchase it from your website again, get it installed again. So again, software distribution, you're seeing a pattern here, it's difficult. And then it got to grow even better, where internet connectivity speeds became faster. I know I can say this because I'm from Kansas City where we have Google Fiber. So it's, it's fairly easy to download things nowadays, but not everybody has fiber internet connection. So if you have a large downloadable file, that's a burden on your users, on your clients that are downloading your app, your softwares, and to be able to install it. And so that's where, we came up with the concept and idea of offline technologies. So you would download something like Outlook, where then it downloads small packets, your emails, so that we have that additional data, but it works offline for you as well. Again, there's that barrier still. You still have to download that Outlook to begin with, and it's a massive, it comes with either other software or it's difficult to obtain on its own. But you still had to purchase, manually download, and manually install it. So, but today we have web apps like Gmail here, where, where it's the web enhanced to where we have a rich set of tools and services that allows us to keep that to our users no longer have to download and install anything. They can have the same access and tool set available online. You have, there is an offline capability within Gmail to where you can still access your emails, you can still get to that same kind of content, and you no longer have to install it manually. You may not think about this, but you have what they call evergreen of Gmail. Do you know what version of Gmail you're using right now? No, because it's always up to date. You never have to burden your users with, wait, you have to uninstall this update before you can use this new feature. So that's the benefit of web. A lot of us know this already, but it's the journey of software distribution. You no longer have to manage your software distribution process. You no longer have to worry about what users are using different versions. It just works. On a similar point, I no longer have an ever-growing collection of Encyclopedia Britannica or Microsoft Encarta that gets out of date. It just works because I use tools now like Wikipedia and IMDb, where the data no longer gets stagnant. I don't have to worry about purchasing, downloading, getting that content so I can ingest it. I just know where to go, and I have that content readily available. And this is where the web comes to the rescue, again. So as XKCD points out, the web helps us, the web is the most friction-free platform to obtain software, to where we no longer have to worry about how our customers get our software, access our content. The links, the URLs, you can send them directly to other users, and they know exactly what you're looking at. They know exactly what Wikipedia article you're talking about when you want to share data with them. They no longer have to install this to then go to this section of the app and then figure out what you're talking about. But there's still an issue. What's missing? So we're now using mobile devices. We all have our Android, iOSs, iPhones, that kind of stuff. And so the mobile web has been getting better, but there's still some things missing for us. We didn't have the home screen access, so that app-like capability where you just tap it on the screen, like I want to get back to Wikipedia really fast because I know where this article is. Instead, you had to open up a browser, type in Wikipedia, or sometimes search for it if you forgot how to spell Wikipedia, and go in and then search again. Whereas if you just had the app, you just open it right up because you know exactly what you're going to look for. But with that home screen access, it also allows your users to re-engage with your application. If you run an e-commerce solution, have those users be able to come back, re-engage, like, oh, I want to buy this other thing now. It's on my wish list, that kind of thing. Push notifications are another big thing that the web didn't have yet. Mobile web didn't have yet, to where, again, re-engage your users. Hey, this item is still in your shopping cart. Apps can do that just fine, which they work great for that, native app developers. That's perfect. But the web was missing that. So if you are an e-commerce solution trying to re-engage your users, you were missing that feature and you really needed it. Offline didn't really work well for the mobile web. It was missing a lot of things. You could try and skate around and get some things to work, but it didn't really work for offline capabilities or even slow connectivities. There were other things like device-specific APIs, Bluetooth, the camera. So there's certain things that, if you wanted to be able to take a picture of a receipt and upload it online, you couldn't do that. You had to have the file already saved and then upload it using the typical file upload platform. So the lack of mobile web features led to the app stores, where native apps came about. But technically on mobile, we took a step backwards in our software distribution model, because with the web, everybody was able to go and find our software, find the link to it, and share that Wikipedia article. Well, with the mobile app stores, now they have to go find the app, download it, install it, then search again for what they were looking for. So we're back to that same model when we had to download the software and then install it and make sure they found that content again. So it took a step backwards. And no offense to the mobile developers. I mean, it's a great ecosystem. But again, the other hard part that you have, there's a ton of other apps that you're competing against. So when somebody searches for a productivity tool, how many productivity tools there are in either app store? I mean, how are they going to find yours when they search for like the one a coupon app on the Android one? So there's 100 different coupon apps that show up, but your coupon world, how do they know which one to find you? Unless they know the specific name of your app. But I mean, the reason this kind of came about was, again, the mobile web wasn't ready yet. We didn't have these features. And like I was saying, the issue with these native apps is the distribution process. If you go back through the full development lifecycle of these native apps, it's a pay-to-play kind of model. You have to pay to write these apps. You have to pay before you can launch an app on the Android Play Store. You have to pay annually to launch an app in the Apple App Store. You have to write it in native code. This is before hybrid. You had to write it in native code, so you had to either learn that new language, or you had to hire somebody who knew that, and so you have that other hurdle for distribution. Then you have to compile the binary of it. Again, I'm not trying to offend any native developer. I've been down this road as well. You have to sign and package it for distribution. So you have to know how to do all the authentication on your local development and everything. Then you have to go and submit it to the different app stores, which could take 30 minutes to 3 weeks. You never know. And so after you find, let's say everything goes well and you've got it in the app store, now you have to hope somebody finds it. Because again, the search algorithms in there aren't the greatest. I mean, they're divided into categories, genres, but who's looking for a coupon app? And how many coupon apps are there? The average mobile app spends about $1.50 per user for somebody to find your app in the either store. $1.50 per user. An additional $2.50 average per user for them to install it and use it for up to 3 months. So that's how much mobile ads you have to place in order for them to find those native apps. With that, once they've installed it, you have to think about these hardships sometimes for your users. Devices are limited in storage. Devices are limited with connectivity based on their locale. They're based on the processing speeds of the device. So the app might not be as performant. If you're using, a fancy brand new Pixel 2 XL, or if you're using, I know as Pearl and Abraham were mentioning in their talk, a Moto G4. Very different hardware specs. So, and then the other thing that you have to worry about is OS updates. So there's certain OS updates that happen that sometimes freak out your app. I know it was it was a necessary move, but when Apple decided to go, all apps have to be 64-bit compatible, that freaked out a lot of developers. There was a massive uproar because it was that every app, you were either going to get pulled from the store or you had to upgrade your app to be 64-bit compatible. And so that was a huge hurdle to overcome. All of us have seen a mobile app, or we've gone to a mobile website that has thrown up an app interstitial like this, where you search for something on Google, you clicked on the link to the website, and you start reading the content, then all of a sudden this big banner covers up the whole mobile screen. You should install our app because it's a better experience because we didn't spend time building a mobile version of our website, and forcing you to install that mobile app. This is a horrible user experience, and Google now actively, lower ranks that search result if they detect this on the mobile version of your website, because this is a horrible user experience. It tells your users, you don't want to read our content right now. You really want to go download our app, spend the time downloading our app, installing it, signing in, and then finding it again. So that makes it very difficult. Who is this even helpful to? So this is where Google recommends using, so for the native developers, this is not encouraging you to switch to PWAs necessarily. If you have an existing mobile app, you can use what they call an app install banner. So it shows up on the lower third of the screen for your users saying, hey, we also have this app available, but it's not preventing them from continuing to use your website. And eventually you can use the same pattern to go towards the PWA if you want to have both or replace with a PWA. For this, you just need a web manifest file, a service worker, and it has to be served over HTTPS. Manifest and service worker we'll talk about here in a second, but everything should nowadays be served over HTTPS. As of Chrome version 68, which will be coming out in June, I believe? July. So as of July, all websites that are not served over HTTPS are going to be marked with a big thing in the URL bar as unsecure. So if your website isn't being served over that, it's going to freak out your users that your site is not secured. So every website should go towards that regardless. So now that we've talked about some of the issues surrounding the mobile web, now this brings us to the PWAs. So 10 years ago, this technology was called Google Gears. Anybody remember Google Gears back in the day? So yes, we got a few hands here. So it was also known as the application cache, which was the part of the original HTML5 spec. So there was also that. If you remember Google Gears, you probably remember app cache. So to understand the P and PWA, let's look at progressive enhancement. So this is kind of where the progressive comes from in PWA. So it's a strategy for web design that emphasizes accessibility, your HTML markup, and external style sheet scripting technologies. So think of it like the peanut M&M. So the peanut is your content. The chocolate layer is how you're going to make your, so it's your CSS, like how people are going to view this content. And then your client-side scripting, so your JavaScript and your PWA layer live in the hard candy shell. So it's the very light, thin layer that you're adding on to your existing mobile web app. And it was Aaron Gustafson who came up with this idea. I have to give that attribution back to him. I didn't think of this peanut analogy, he did. He's a very brilliant guy when it comes to talking about PWAs and stuff like that. So, but again, the hard candy shell is where the PWA lives. So you're not having to redo your entire mobile website just to make it a progressive web app. You can easily add these features. So what is a progressive web app? So it's progressive. It has to work with every user, regardless of what platform they're on. If they're on desktop, if they're on a Chromebook, if they're on Microsoft Surface, if they're on an iOS device, iPad, your website works across all of them. Not all features may work, but your website, your mobile web app, still works regardless of what device that they're using. Responsive, again, regardless of what device they're using, it fits any form factor, responsiveness. Connectivity independent, so whether they're offline going through a tunnel, they're traveling in an airplane on slow Wi-Fi, or they're in Kansas City on Google Fiber. You know, whatever connectivity they have, your web app is going to work great. Has to be app-like, has to feel like a mobile app, hence why we're trying to go to the mobile web app. So you have your different menu structure. You have the splash screen when you open it up. You have the add to home screen button. You have push notifications. So there's different attributes that you can give your mobile web app that makes it feel like a web app, a mobile app. It's fresh. You're using up-to-date content. It's not getting stagnant. So you're not serving up all of us probably have those profile pages that we created to show off how awesome of a developer we are, and we haven't touched it for like the last 10 years, right? So that's not really what a PWA would be for. It's more for serving up your blog, serving up an e-commerce website, that kind of stuff. So something that's always going to be fresh and re-engaging to your users. Safe. Again, served over HTTPS. That's the only way that any browser that's coming out will mark it as will understand that as a PWA and mark it as safe for somebody to install, add to their home screen. Discoverable. Since it is a web app, it's served over the web. SEO works great for this. You don't have to spend any additional marketing dollars to figure out how people can find it. It shows up in Google searches. It shows up as and when content within it also shows up in Google searches as well. So people can link directly to your progressive web app and then install it later. Re-engageable. So again, that's if you're having that fresh content, if you're using push notifications, that helps keep users coming back and re-engaging with your app. Installable. The add to home screen button, when you make it to where you can add the app icon to the home screen, that gives it that extra accessibility where people can come back and re-engage. So that's also a form of re-engagement. And then linkable. Again, what I mentioned earlier, how you can link directly to that content without having to tell somebody to go install this PWA so you can go find this content later. You can share the URL directly to that content without needing for them to install anything. So a couple examples would be Twitter. Twitter Lite is what they're calling it. Is a PWA that Twitter came out with last summer, that allows you to do everything that I talked about. It's Twitter, just in the PWA form. Pinterest also has one now, where it keeps everything super lightweight. It's all fresh content. You don't have to install their app anymore if space is an issue on your device. So now that we know kind of what makes up a PWA, the key factors, let's look into some principles of how to keep our web app a PWA. So we're going to focus on responsiveness. So again, the form factor is key here. So you don't have to make a different mobile web app. You know, how you go to some sites where it's m.example.com. You don't have to serve it under a different domain. You don't have to serve it as a subdomain. you can use example.com and serve it responsively, it works across whatever device you're on. The other awesome thing is recently I learned this, or Tara mentioned this earlier in her talk this morning, how the Microsoft Surface is treating PWAs as first-class citizens now to where you can install it to their drawer and use them as an actual app. Chromebooks, you've been able to do this for a while. So regardless of the form factor, this isn't just a mobile phone, this isn't just a tablet feature. Laptops are starting to adopt this as well, where you can use them as apps. Excuse me. So this is, keeping it responsive to where it fits the form factor, helps the user feel like they're still using an app. The web app manifest is key that helps make all of this happen for the PWA. It allows you to request to add it to the home screen. So when you add it to the home screen, the user can alter the shortcode, but the short name, but typically they leave it alone. And it shows up in that second screen as a typical app icon on their home screen. The latest version of Android actually puts it in the app drawer. So when they're scrolling through their list of apps in the app drawer, it shows up as an actual app within there. And then if you have the web app manifest all set up, you can launch it to where it shows a splash screen just like a native app would. If you want to see or have a cool example of how to build a web app manifest, there's a Googler made this app, appmanifest.firebaseapp.com. And all you do is just type in your content, pick your colors, upload your app icon, and it spits back the JSON and the generated app icons for you, to where you don't have to remember how what key value pairs you have to do, what sizes your app icon images are. This app will do it all for you. So adding the home screen. So this is what the app Intersted looks like. That pops up on the lower third. This pops up when your user re-engages with your web app, to where it's not going to show up the first time, but maybe the second time within 5 minutes or more. On Chrome, it will realize maybe this user, since they keep coming back and wanting to re-engage with this website, they might want to save this for later. So it's technically a glorified bookmark, but with a lot more cool features built into it, which gives you the capabilities of customizing the app icon, customizing the splash screen. And, again, in order for this to happen, it has to be served over HTTPS. So it has to be served securely. So this is a short example of how the JSON manifest looks like. So that link that I showed you 2 slides ago will generate this for you. You just add it to your HTML with the manifest. So you have to include it so that way it has a reference to it. And then this is what the JSON looks like. There's a lot more to it, but this is the most simplified version of it that would fit on one slide. So what this also does, I did learn this morning in Tara's talk, the short name also supports emojis. So if you're interested in having emojis as part of your title. So that was an interesting part of her talk. So yeah, so if your website, web app uses emojis, it is supported in here as well. But so what you can do, the different key value pairs, so the start URL, so whenever your users go to re-engage with your PWA, you can have it launch to a specific page. You can put, if you're using analytics tracking, you can have it say that they're opening up your website from the add to home screen button. And so that could show up in your Google Analytics or whatever analytics platform you're using. And so that way you know where that user is coming from. So it's no longer a direct link, or it's no longer, or however they came to you, you can track that they were coming back from the home screen, so you could prove the value of the PWA to the business people. The other, what I was going to say. the other thing that the web app manifest does is identifies all the URLs that are part of your web app, your PWA, as being part of the same application. So whenever there's, so if you already had the PWA installed for DevFestMN website, and somebody sent you the link to the schedule, so the direct link to the schedule, your browser knows that you already have the PWA installed and knows to open up the PWA to that page. So that's another cool feature of it. So based on this web app manifest, it knows and can encapsulate the web app, unless it's new content that it doesn't necessarily know about. So that I haven't tested that part of it yet. But I do know that if it recognizes that the web app, the manifest is saved and the service worker is saved, it will direct the user to that. And this works across browsers on mobile. So on Android, you have Chrome, Firefox, Edge, Opera. All of these support this right now, out of the box, the latest versions. So with push notifications, so this is, again, another new thing that's come to the mobile web on how you can keep your users re-engaged. So whenever you're in an online e-commerce store and you add something to your cart, using the service worker, it can figure out that it can receive from your server that something's been sitting in the cart, and then authenticated to give the user a push notification. Hey, you still have something sitting in your cart. You can come back to us and purchase it, or you can send out discount codes, that kind of stuff. Or if you're running a blog or article news website, hey, we just published this new thing. We think you would like it, and you can come check it out. So kind of a way to keep your users re-engaged. And this is also, the other browser I forgot to mention, the Samsung S browser also has these capabilities as well. So I've been mentioning service workers a bunch. So what really are service workers? It's a script that runs in the background over a secure HTTPS connection. So, and it's completely separate from your web app. So it comes, whenever the user comes to your website and visits your websites, if the browser detects it and the browser supports service workers, it'll automatically download and install it in the background for your user. That helps keep that, and it does it, again, because it's over HTTPS, it's secure, and the browser knows that it's authenticated for your web app and your web app only, and can handle that, whatever other requests that come through. It responds to different events. So like if your network connectivity fails, so the user suddenly goes offline because they're on the metro and they're going through a tunnel, your web app your service worker you have to write this, your service worker can figure out that the user is now offline and hold off on loading the next page, saying, wait a second, you're offline, we can do this when you come back. Or if they're in the middle of typing something and go to submit it, it can prevent them from submitting until they're back online, or it can just save it in the local cache and then submit it once they've regained connectivity. So there's all kinds of different things that you could do with the service worker. And the other thing to remember, it's an intentionally short lifetime on the service worker. So it's not always running. It only responds to events that trigger it. So one question I get asked a lot is, how secure is it? Well, I mean, you are serving it over HTTPS. So you have to have at least TLS1 security for the browser to confirm that secure handshake. So if you're trying to handle secure confidential information like a password or banking information, that kind of stuff. I mean, again, remember it is served over an HTTPS connection. So no other app can say, hey, I already have a service worker installed, and hijack it, because the browser has it authenticated and knows that you're not the web app that I previously have this connected with, so it's not going to work. So your information is safe and secure in that. So there's limited chances of a man-in-the-middle kind of targeting that happens. So how service workers work for offline caching. So this is, I mean, I know it's a little hard to read, but It wakes up whenever it gets an event and runs only as long as it needs to process it. It allows you to use the cache API that's built into the browser and the resource, and so that way it can grab your resources and store them locally for that offline experience. Other things that you can use the service worker for, so like this, again, this is just an offline example, but you can tie into NFC, you can tie into Bluetooth, you can tie into the camera. So you have those capabilities that the service worker gives you. It gives you access to those device APIs using your web browser. So when to use offline? So this is another hard question to answer. So there are, because it's a special case, and you usually reserve it for either no connectivity or flaky connectivity. So you don't want to force it on your user. You want to have that detection built into it. So, and by having that offline capabilities built into your app doesn't fail, and you don't see the Chrome. If your user is on Chrome, they don't see the Chrome, dinosaur, because that's bad user experience when they're trying to browse your PWA. So by supporting offline first, you can control what your user sees if they lose that connectivity. So another quick poll to make sure everybody's remembering on this one. Has anybody seen the Gmail HTML version? So a couple hands. So only a few of you have seen it. So there's an HTML only version of Gmail that happens when you're on low connectivity. And that's if you're having extreme networking issues and stuff like that. And it's very limited on the features, but Gmail still is provided to you and still functions with limited capabilities. So that's an example. It's not a PWA, but that's an example of what you can do to provide your users when those flaky connectivity situations come into play. But we want to offline all the apps, so that way we never see that Chrome dinosaur ever again. The game is fun to play, but but we want to make sure our users are happy and can still continue using them. So we're going to do a quick architecture of what makes a PWA. So we've talked about a lot of different pieces, what makes up PWAs. We're going to look at how we can actually build the PWA. So what makes the PWA work for the offline capabilities is building the application shell. So again, this is the candy color-coded layer of the peanut M&M. Our content, again, is just the peanut. So whatever we're building in the application shell is what still works when we're offline. So this gets cached whenever our users come to and use our PWA, so that way they don't have to wait for that content to be loaded every time they come back to use it. That application shell is pre-cached, so there's something ready to go right when your user comes to your PWA. Again, cat photos, because cats are the best. But that's your content coming back into the app. That's separate. So you have to wait on the network request for that instead of all the pretty. You don't have the other advantages to the application shell. You don't have to wait for any of the TCP physical connections. You don't have to wait for any of that stuff. You don't have to worry about that type of connectivity. By constructing this application shell, it just loads instantly for your users. And they get that instant app-like experience. So again, the offline Wikipedia app, so you're able to use Wikipedia as a PWA. This is a side project that somebody did of the Wikipedia API. So this is Wikipedia's version. But again, you can see on the left just the cached application shell. So it's not the Chrome dinosaur, but it's also not waiting on a loading screen. So when your user sees this framework show up, right, they know exactly like something is coming. There's something that's usable already. And then the content gets dynamically loaded in later. Whenever the network connection is completed. So then we're gonna, so everybody cool with the UpShow? Kind of makes sense? Yes. Yeah. No, because that's the user's right on the browser. So you can't prevent them from clearing their cache. So good question though. So, but yeah, that's where this stuff is stored, so that way they can access it better, faster later. So good question.
Can you add it to screen, book screen? Is it possible to take the item by manifest fashion?
Yes. So you just when you there was a caching sometimes that you might have to. So it's not going to change instantly, but you can do that once their cache refreshes. So it depends on how you have that served. So good question. So cool. So we're going to look at a couple of examples, resources, and tools now to kind of help further along our discovery with PWAs. So if you want to look at some examples, a lot of these are lightweight examples of how you can implement PWAs in much different ways. The top left one is a favorite of a lot of people. It's the air horner, where it just makes a loud air horn noise. That's really all it does, but it also works offline, so fun. So there's a lot of fun things that you could do with different things. So there's some games that are in here. There's Flipkart was one of the first enterprise. I don't know if I can technically say enterprise on that, but because they're the Amazon of the Asian market, so enterprise. But so if you're wanting, they ditched their native app, rewrote everything as a PWA, and they increased user engagement. And so you could see like how they did that when they relaunched with the PWA. There's also a QR code scanner. The Google I/O conference did their conference site as a PWA instead of having an actual native mobile app to kind of show off the technology in that kind of format. A couple resources, additional learning. Google has a lot of great documents. MDN also has a lot of great dev docs on learning about, more into the PWA, like what down that path. If you want, and there's the link there. There's a lot of tutorials and code labs linked from Google's dev docs on this. So if you want to get your hands dirty and play in the code and figure out, how could this apply better for my use case, there's a lot of great tutorials. I want to say there were 6 last time I looked on that, and they're always adding more. And I will have all these slides sent out on the interwebs, so you don't have to remember to write down all these URLs. So another thing to keep in mind is, since we talked a lot about service workers, there's a lot that you can do with service workers. Jake Archibald put this together where it detects if what pieces of the service worker are available on the different flavors of browsers. And as you can see, Safari is in green, so which is really exciting for us web developers that Safari is actually working on it now. And they have a few different things ready to go. There's still a lot of things yet to come with the service worker for what they support, but hopefully by the end of the year or next year, there will be a lot more cool things that come out from that. But if you're interested about a specific server worker feature and what browsers have implemented it, this is a great site to use for that. Chrome DevTools, it has a lot of great resources on inspecting your manifest, inspecting your service worker, but they also include this tool called Lighthouse, which you can run it as a Chrome extension. It runs in your Chrome DevTools, but you can also run it via the CLI to inspect your PWA on how everything works. It audits. You get performance metrics based on did you construct a PWA based on the recommended standards of PWAs? Is it responsive? Is it fast and low connectivity? These kind of things. Is your app show constructed correctly? So it helps you not only detect that, but it links you to articles and best practices on how to improve upon that as well. There's another tool that, so if you were in Pearl Abraham's talk at noon, there's another tool that they mentioned, I don't have in here, but the PageSpeed Insights from Google. So if you've been around the web for a while, that tool has been very available. And the one thing I would recommend, Do not trust that fully for a PWA, because that tool is more designed nowadays to inspect and test performance of AMP websites, accelerated mobile pages. So PageSpeed Insights can help you on certain enhancements to your progressive web app, but you're not going to get a perfect score on that. So do not use that as your benchmark if you're used to using PageSpeed Insights as a benchmark. But again, just to wrap up, we talked about the history of how we got here, what are PWAs, how we build PWAs, and a couple of tools and resources. A few, like as I mentioned earlier, we had Tara's talk this morning, Pro and Abraham at lunch, and my talk. These are our Twitter handles. We are posting all of our PWA, all the thing, links to our slides. So, and you can also hit us up on these Twitter handles for all of our stuff. We have Tara and Abraham sitting over here. So if you didn't see them earlier, we have this great slide putting us all together. And thanks. So thank you guys for coming out.